What's up, everyone? Welcome to the very first episode of Takin Bumps podcast, featuring your host, Primetime Mike Bolin, and Justin Holland.
Hello, hello.
He couldn't come up with a gimmick, so we just...
Give me a week, I'll find it.
We are here. We're talking everything WWE, pro wrestling in general. We're going to be talking things SummerSlam. We're going to be previewing that for everybody. Giving our predictions and our thoughts on everything that's going to happen. I think it's going to be an awesome show, and I think there's going to be some surprises.
Oh, yes, definitely.
We're going to be talking what happened this week on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown Live on Tuesday. We're going to be talking everything that we know so far about WWE 2K17. There's some big stuff going on with that. What else are we going to be talking about, Justin?
Oh, we also got some new rumors and some suspensions in the wrestling news today, recently this week. Like you said before, a lot of rumors and predictions following around SummerSlam. We also, let's see here, we had the recent draft. We have, due to the draft extension, we also have a new championship debuting tomorrow night at SummerSlam, the Universal Championship. So we're going to see what kind of predictions we have about that. I mean, answer any questions that people may have had about that. We also have the Cruiserweight Classic going on recently on the W Network, and I'm assuming after the tournament is over, that's when the Cruiserweights will be, the division will be live on Raw Monday nights.
It's interesting to see which competitors are going to move from the Cruiserweight Classic and skip over NXT, which is very unheard of right now for people to skip over NXT. Like, the only person recently to really do that, to sign with the company and skip over NXT, would be AJ Styles and Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson.
With the club, yes, of course.
But it'll be interesting to see how many of the Cruiserweight Classic competitors go to the NXT route and how many of them actually move up to the main roster. Because there are some guys in NXT that would follow into the Cruiserweight division. I definitely think Neville is a guy on Raw currently that will end up in the Cruiserweight division. But there's a couple of guys. And there's guys that would technically, by weight class, fall into the NXT, the WWE Championship division, like Finn Balor. He is the current number one contender, along with Seth Rollins, for the Universal title over on Raw. But by weight class, he would actually be considered for the Cruiserweight title when they introduce that as well.
Oh, definitely.
So there's going to be some give and take there, and there's definitely going to be some things to discuss and decipher. So definitely the Cruiserweight division is one thing we want to talk about. And I want to talk about some things that are personally bothering me in pro wrestling, and we'll get to that. I also want to talk about TNA and the possibility of them actually becoming a viable competition to WWE. So, and maybe after we get our first segment out of the way, we'll talk about that first, because that's kind of a negative thing for me. So first, though, we want to introduce everybody to who we are and why we should actually have our own podcast, and why we're just two weirdos talking to a video screen here.
That's what we do.
Yeah. We've been friends for 15 years now?
Roughly, yep.
Roughly. And been wrestling fans pretty much longer than that. And that's one of the things that brought us together as friends, is our love for professional wrestling and WWE in general. For me, growing up, the first name I remember, and it's probably the first name most people remember about pro wrestling, was Hulk Hogan. I was a big Hulk Hogan fan, and it's funny because that's actually how we met. Elementary school, we showed up first day of school. He was a grade behind me, and we both had a Hulk Hogan lunchbox, and we were mortal enemies because we thought we were stealing the other one's style. But for me, it was Hulk Hogan, and then transitioning from there, Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart and Stone Cold and The Rock. These are the guys I grew up on, and so I a lot of times will draw back to that era, and my comparisons and everything like that. Also, I've done some independent wrestling. I've worked a few matches, and I've done things like that. And so I have ventured off into pro wrestling, and it's something I am very passionate about. I mean, it's what consumes my life 90% of the time, other than my daughter and work. Pro wrestling consumes my life. So when I talk about pro wrestling, I get very passionate, and you guys will see that as the podcasts keep going and things like that. One thing I want to stress is that it won't always just be us two. We're going to have a round robin of different co-hosts and guests. We've got several people that have already volunteered to say we want to come on and we want to talk and we want to discuss pro wrestling, and that's what we want. That's why we're doing it live. We want to discuss pro wrestling with other pro wrestling fans. WWE may call it sports entertainment all they want, but for me, it's always pro wrestling.
Right.
So that's what we want to do, and we want to discuss pro wrestling with other pro wrestling fans, and it's what we do 90% of the time when we're not on camera anyway. So,
right.
But as far as influences in pro wrestling, I think definitely Shawn Michaels, Triple H, The Rock, CM Punk, guys like that. Those were my influences. Current guys that I like, Dean Ambrose, Ben Balor, Dolph Ziggler, guys that can go. Seth Rollins. I love me some Seth Rollins.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm still a big Brock Lesnar fan. I mean, that dude, when that dude gets in the ring, it's business. And I think we're going to see that on tomorrow at SummerSlam.
He definitely draws money, draws a crowd, draws attention. No matter who it's been, whether it was when he returned against John Cena, whether it was Triple H at WrestleMania, the streak match with The Undertaker, even his minor matches with like Kofi Kingston and The Big Show. And no matter who it was against, Brock Lesnar drew attention. And there's going to be a lot of attention on him tomorrow night at SummerSlam. Definitely.
I think it's your turn to introduce yourself, talk about pro wrestling with you.
All right, well, Justin is my name. Again, I grew up into the business. My mother thought it'd be a great idea when I was in the womb to plug in some headphones and stretch them across her stomach so I could hear pro wrestling. So I was fresh out into the world. My first breath, it was loving professional wrestling. Of course, like he said, as a kid, you always idolize Hulk Hogan. I was also a huge fan of the Big Boss Man and Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Loved the style of the Rockers as a tag team. And then kind of merged into just Bret Hart, Diesel, Razor Ramon, Undertaker. And I wasn't a watcher of the Attitude Era. I merged when Hall and Nash left to WCW. That's where I followed. I followed WCW, and I watched the evolution of Sting, the rise of Bill Goldberg from being just a nobody. His very first match, they had no idea who he was, and he turned into being, 108, 170?
176, I believe.
A huge number of straight victories. And his world title reign against Hulk Hogan when he defeated him on Nitro. And then after WCW closed their doors, I followed back into WWE. And then with the new transition of guys like John Cena, Batista, Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar. And then just been like a steady viewer ever since then with WWE. I tapped into TNA a couple of times. Guys like Kurt Angle and Jeff Hardy, again, drawing the attention of some of the viewers who watch the old professional wrestling with WWE. Always been a fan of like Hogan and Brett and Shawn, kind of the big name guys. But then as growing up, I looked back in some of the old matches and became a huge fan of like Mr. Perfect. Currently, I'm in the kick of Natural Disasters. I know it's a weird thing. I was thinking about it. I was like, it's a tag team that didn't get a huge push, but they were tag team champions. They had some good matches with the Legion of Doom. And I don't know.
Don't get me wrong. I love Earthquake.
Oh yeah.
I loved Earthquake's matches. I loved him in WCW, whether he was the Shark, whether he was under his real name, John Tenta. I loved his stuff in WCW, and they just didn't give him the right push for it. Which, speaking of push, I think we're going to go into what's bothering me in pro wrestling.
That was very quick. Topic number two.
Because, see, push reminded me of what is pissing me off right now in pro wrestling. By the way, these podcasts are probably going to be not suitable for work. Because I have a really, really hard time not cursing. Sorry. That's just the way it is.
Especially when the passion comes out, discussing issues. Going over topics is one thing, but discussing certain situations and people that, like you said, pissing us off.
Yeah. So the first thing, that I want to talk about with this segment is there was an interview with Cody Rhodes done recently. It was done by Aubrey Sitterson, which I don't know if you remember Aubrey, but he was back when THQ had the WWE Games title. He was one of the guys that would reveal a lot of stuff. Him and Ledesma. He was the guy with the long hair and the beard.
Okay.
But Aubrey Sitterson did a shoot interview with Cody Rhodes, and they were talking about the stuff that he was doing with Arrow, being a guest star on Arrow and things like that. But one of the things Cody kept mentioning in the interview is that one thing that pisses Cody off is that when non-wrestling people who have never been in the business, use wrestling terminology like push, job, shoot. For example, he actually had a problem. The name of the podcast that Aubrey does is Straight Shooting. He had a problem with the name of the podcast.
Okay.
So things like that. He pisses Cody off when people don't use it. Here's my thing, Cody, and this is directed directly at you, Cody Rhodes. The business is out there. The business is open. It's been out there since before we were born.
Yeah.
The business is exposed. Kayfabe is dead. I'm sorry to tell you, but kayfabe is dead. So when people who aren't in wrestling, who have access to the WWE Network and have access to all of these terms, and they grow accustomed, people like us that grew up growing accustomed to using these words, I'm sorry that it pisses you off. And if you don't want to give a fan an autograph because he used the word shoot, because he used some word like finish or something like that's technically an insider term, screw you, Cody Rhodes. Screw you. But seriously, if I get a chance, I'm going to get an autograph from him. I'm just saying.
I'm going to try.
I like Cody Rhodes. I liked his ring work. I like Cody Rhodes. But I do not like when wrestlers get this idea that they have all say on everything. And, kayfabe this and this. But then you're going to do a shoot interview. That's what killed kayfabe. So you're kind of contradicting yourself there, and it's kind of pissing me off.
Well, I think what really transitioned from going from, professional wrestling is real. These are real characters. These are really real lives. Was the Madison Square Garden, what was it called? I'm sorry.
The curtain call.
The curtain call incident with Razor Ramon, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash when he was playing Diesel, Hunter Hearst Helmsley, and Shawn Michaels. They were all buddies backstage. They were friends. They rolled together. They went out and got dinner, drinks. They talked all the time. And they came out in front of a live audience, and they gave each other a huge hug because that's when Hall and Nash were leaving for WCW. And the problem with that was Hunter wasn't supposed to be on screen friends with these guys. At the time, Shawn was having a huge issue with Diesel.
Well,
Kevin
basically,
Nash.
Diesel was a heel, Hunter was a heel, Razor was a face, and Shawn was a face.
Right. And it was just, at the time, that was the early formation, I think, of the Attitude Era. Even Shawn, the good guy, still had his bad guy tendencies. He was cussing at people, pushing people around. You didn't really see that, but he had that edge to him. So then what the problem with that is when you have social media today, and you don't want, at the time, you didn't want to even mention the other company. WCW wasn't even a thing. It was the World Wrestling Federation or nothing at all. They didn't want you to know about them because they didn't want them to have ratings. But when you go on Twitter and you get Bubba Ray Dudley, who's part of the WWE now, tweeting Matt Hardy, part of TNA Wrestling, kayfabe is broken when they are still communicating. You're not supposed to know about that.
I'll take that one step further.
What's that?
The Matt Hardy thing reminded me. When you've got Chris Jericho, one of the top heels of all time, in my opinion, who is also doing some of his best heel work right now in WWE, doing his podcast, and you've got Matt Hardy on his podcast.
Yeah. I forgot about that one. Yeah, Matt was just on there.
And Matt was in his TNA gimmick. Like, it wasn't just Matt Hardy and Chris Irvine, Chris Jericho on the podcast. It was Chris Jericho interviewing, sorry, I can't speak today, interviewing the broken Matt Hardy. So, I mean, that...
See, that's when you keep kayfabe alive. Is when you're doing a podcast, a shoot interview, you're doing a local news casting for, promoting a wrestling event that night. You go as character. I remember, I don't know if it was here for where it was at, but Bray Wyatt was on a live news anchor show, and he was just in regular street clothes. He had a beanie on, and he was just talking.
That was here.
Was that here?
I
don't remember what that was. I'm not sure what that was.
That's like one of them moments with Mean Gene backstage.
And the stuff falling behind, yeah.
Right.
So, it's if you want to keep kayfabe alive, you got to do it in character, no matter where you're at. If you're a bad guy, I remember reading somewhere that Melina, when she was a face, which I'm sorry to use the terms here, but the baby face being a good person, at the time a good girl, she would give autographs, take pictures, greet people. But when she was a heel and she was a bad guy, she'd blow them off. She wouldn't say hi to them. She'd be snotty. Like, she kept the kayfabe alive. But nowadays, you got Seth Rollins and Kevin Owens, and they're hilarious on Twitter, but you're not supposed to like them.
I'll give you one now that's still keeping kayfabe alive, and that's Chris Jericho. Everybody's been bugging Chris Jericho to sell T-shirts that say "stupid idiot" or whatever for his new catchphrases that he's using. And Chris Jericho has said in interviews, "I won't do it." And he goes, "I don't want you to like me enough to buy my T-shirt."
Right, and I could see Chris Jericho being that kind of person. Don't like me, you're supposed to hate me. And I mean, Chris Jericho is the best in the world at what he does. Even hating him, like Roddy Piper in his day, you still gotta love him for what he's doing.
Yeah,
it's entertaining, it's great, but
I do see that we have a viewer, at least one, maybe some more. I can't tell who it is, but if you're watching this and you have any questions, go ahead and we'll answer them right here in the comments section. So go ahead and shoot those questions in. Go ahead and like the video, give it a share, get it out there as much as possible. I appreciate it. So the next thing I want to talk about, something that's really important to you and I.
Let's take two. All right.
Right, take two. Is the WWE 2K17.
Ooh, a lot of things going on with that. The roster last year for 2K15 was already the largest roster in a wrestling game with 120 plus.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not mistaken, that did not count the DLC.
No, it did
I want to say the DLC was an extra, like about 20 to 30 extra people. And this year, when you are waiting for the roster reveal every week, there's 150, I think.
Yeah.
Which so far is just really everyone from last year getting carried over,
and with a couple of new additions.
A few new additions actually. So far we've got Charlotte, Becky Lynch, I believe was announced already.
Becky Lynch.
Sasha Banks. And hopefully Bayley's going to be in there too. She's been around for a couple years now, so I wouldn't see why she wouldn't be in this one.
AJ Styles.
Mm-hmm.
The Dudleys returning to WWE games. You're going to have... who else was new this year? A lot of the Divas were new.
We got Braun Strowman.
Braun Strowman's
making his
new.
debut in the 2K games. Hoping returning Alberto Del Rio. He's been back since October. I would assume he made it in if AJ Styles made it in.
Right.
So
I'm hoping for the club.
Mm-hmm. Gallows and Anderson, definitely. That it wouldn't be complete to have AJ Styles without Gallows and Anderson following behind him. We still have 2 more weeks to go for roster reveals. We're up to 77 reveals so far, but we already know about Vince McMahon, Shane McMahon, Stephanie McMahon. We already know about John Cena and Sasha Banks. She wasn't part of the 77. The Ultimate Warrior was already announced, but he was in the roster reveal in the first week.
Right, and then you have Goldberg, DLC.
Goldberg was DLC.
Same thing with Brock Lesnar because he's the cover superstar. We know he's going to be on there.
Oh, God, I'd hope so.
So obviously, like, who else is left that you would like to see maybe make a return to the game? Somebody that wasn't on last year's game, but maybe a legend or anything like that. Is there anybody specifically that you want to see?
Well, it was already announced, I think it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago. 2K put out saying that they won't have a showcase mode this year like they have in the past couple of games.
Right.
Because they have ideas of who to showcase over. They just didn't have the contracts and the money and the opportunity to add everything they wanted to, everyone they wanted to. Ultimo Dragon.
That would be awesome, Donnie.
That'd be good for the WCW part of what I was getting ready to say. I assume since Goldberg's the DLC and that Brock Lesnar's on the cover, that they would have a Brock Lesnar showcase and possibly a Goldberg showcase. And if it came to a Goldberg showcase, I would like to see Raven. I remember him and Raven had, I think, at least 1 or 2 matches. I want to say
because he beat him for the U.S. title.
I was going to say I think he beat him for the U.S. title during his undefeated streak, and I couldn't imagine a Goldberg showcase mode without his initial first championship run as U.S. champion. Of course, Hulk Hogan would have to be in there too, as Hollywood Hogan when he defeated him on Nitro for his first world title. But then again, with the recent lawsuit with Hulk Hogan, he's kind of out of the picture, off of TV.
So that one would be hard. And they talked about possibly doing a Brock Lesnar one, and they didn't specifically mention who they couldn't get, but they said it was because they couldn't get certain superstars. My assumption, Kurt Angle. Unfortunately, because that's who I wanted to see come into this game. That was my number 1. My number 2 is somebody we haven't had in a WWE game in a couple of years. That's Eddie Guerrero.
Definitely.
But see, my problem is that we've had Eddie in the last, not last year, but I think the year before that. Maybe it wasn't 15. It was like 13 and 14 we had Eddie.
I know he was in 12.
12 and 13.
He was part of the WCW storyline in that one. 13 and 14 was Attitude Era.
The last one that Doink was in he was DLC for 2009? I want to say he was DLC for 2009.
I want to say 2009.
Or 8. No, because they didn't have DLC for 8, did they?
I don't believe so.
So he was downloadable content for 2009 was the last game that Doink the Clown was in, Donnie.
And 2009 also had the DLC was also the Bushwhackers and Earthquake.
Yep.
And then Vader. They all came back last year's game, and how it's looking, they're going to be in next year's game.
The Bushwhackers have already been announced.
The Bushwhackers have been announced, and then Vader was in the game last year, and so far everyone's carried over from the Stone Cold Showcase, so I would assume Vader's going to be there. But Doink would actually probably not be a bad addition with the new crate features. We can change their tires, change the colors. That wouldn't be bad.
That wouldn't be bad. They said this year that they're ramping up, because they're not doing showcase, they're going to be ramping up the My Career mode, which I'm excited about because I'm really into the My Career mode portion of the game now for 16. So I'm really excited about them ramping that up because it does get repetitive right now with facing the same people over and over again, and the promos are the same thing over and over again. So I'm just not. I'm really hoping that they ramp that up. They're supposed to be ramping up the Universe mode as well with the promo engine that they're introducing this year.
I've always loved the Universe mode. Every year they add something big, but they lose something minor. They added the first year you had all these backstage segments, and you got the cut scene. Thank you so much, Ryan. And it was fun, but you couldn't have Raw on a different show. You couldn't make your own championship belt, so you couldn't make it really your own. And every year they've always added something different. Now you can make your own belts. So you can put your own belts on the shows. You can pick how many matches you want on the shows. You can pick if you want Hunter only on Raw, if you want Triple H on Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Thursday Thunder, whatever you want to do. But they lost the cut scenes, and I think that's what it was a huge. A downgrade for making it a personal show, and they said that now they're going to add the promos backstage. You can interfere in matches again, and I think they also said, what did you say something about earlier about the breakout feature? We could interrupt someone's entrance. Now you can cut them off. If you lose a match, you can break out and jump them after the match.
Or even if you win, you can just continue the
assault. Or even if you win. That's like a good old, I think, Shut Your Mouth, SmackDown, Here Comes the Pain. When you want a match, you can pick just to celebrate. You can help him up, or you can beat his ass afterwards. It really opened up, a variety of how you wanted your character to portray. Brock Lesnar's a good guy right now. Make him beat somebody's ass after the match. Make him be a bad guy again. Or, make him save somebody, It'll make it more personal, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know what else is in store for Universe Mode, but I'm a huge fan of the Universe Modes. So I'm really excited about what's going on.
Creating an entrance video is coming back this year. That was in there a few years ago. You give me be able to create transition video again this year, which I think is big because we play a lot with our own custom superstars. So I think that's going to be big for us this year, being able to make our own entrance videos again, because you always have to use this like random ones that are for somebody else, and it always looks choppy when your guy's making his entrance to the ring.
Yeah.
But I think there's something big still coming from this game that they're not talking about.
Yeah, we're keeping a hush on it, whatever it is.
I get this feeling that there's something big about this game that they're not talking about. And I'm excited to see what it is. You know, we've got about a month and a half before the game comes out. Mm-hmm. So I'm just excited to learn what else is going to be happening. But moving on from the game.
Okay, go for it.
I would like to talk about... Hold on. Put this Conor McGregor guy in this so we can kick his ass. What are your thoughts on his mouth that he don't know how to shut up? You know, actually, that's a good point. And this is something when we were playing the show.
Segue to this one.
This is something we were talking about when we were playing the show, but we didn't put it on our run sheet here, that I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
This actually goes back into things that are pissing me off in pro wrestling. Conor McGregor. Part of it's pissing me off because of what he's saying, but I think there's more to this. I think this is more of a thing that who's working who. I think he's setting up something big for him and Brock or him and somebody else for a WrestleMania. I think this is him setting up a payday for him to come in and work a match with somebody in WWE. I think this is him setting up a storyline. If it's not, I heard an interview with Brock yesterday where Brock said he takes bigger shits than Conor McGregor. So...
Yeah, Brock didn't seem too pleased with it. And it's interesting because when you're a professional wrestler, from what we can tell as fans at least, when you're a sports entertainer, if you're, depending who you are, you never really seem to have a problem with the UFC. They're doing their own thing, they're making their own money, they train their own different ways, they entertain the fans their own certain way. But it seems that people in the UFC, the fighters, always seem to have a problem with pro wrestling, saying it's fake, it's not real, they're not real athletes. UFC fighters fight once a month, maybe every other month.
3-4 times a year, probably.
3 or 4 times a year. I mean, when Brock was competing, he was with UFC for a couple of years. I don't think he wrestled more than a dozen times.
No, he had, I think his professional record is now like 5-3.
5-3. In like 2-3 years' time. He trained. Do not get me wrong. They train.
Ridiculously.
Ridiculously. They have to make weight. They gotta compete. They gotta make sure. The portion of this being real is you really get hit in the face. You get kneed in the stomach. You can really get injured in cage fighting. So they do all they can to train properly. But to go out and say that wrestling is stupid and it's fake and they couldn't last, it depends. So on the standpoint of who's working who, I believe that, I've always believed this since with Ronda Rousey and then Brock coming over, and then a couple years ago when CM Punk departed from professional wrestling to go to UFC, that there's always been some kind of work going on. Taker and Goldberg at the time, they would go over to UFC and watch some of their fights, and they'd be interviewed, and they never seemed to have a problem with it. It's always the cage fighters that have the problem with professional wrestling. So if they ever actually work together, I could see some big cross-branded, articles. McGregor showing up at SummerSlam tomorrow night. I could see Brock showing up to UFC. I believe it's 203 in September, or 202.
No, 202 is tonight.
202 is tonight.
202 is tonight.
So
Conor McGregor fights Nate Diaz. 203, I think, is next month in September.
September 10th.
September 10th, and segueing back into the pro wrestling part of it, that's where CM Punk will make his debut in the UFC. But Donnie's talking about here, and I know Donnie knows this from experience because Donnie and I have worked together in the independent scene. A lot of people say that WWE is theatrical sport. I strongly disagree with that. Timing and training is a key in WWE, but training-wise, it's about the same. We all look for that one KO in UFC and it's over. It lasts seconds. It's real wrestling match goes on. I can kind of see where Donnie's coming from. UFC, they're training for, I think it's 3 5-minute rounds in a non-title fight. Mm-hmm. And that's what they're training for. So basically the longest they're going to be in there is 15 minutes. Most of the time they don't make it out of the first round. in a bigger fight. Look at Ronda Rousey. Most of her fights last 17 seconds. These guys, their conditioning is not what it needs to be. 15, and that's 15 minutes what? 3-4 times a year? WWE superstars are doing 15 minutes 6 nights a week.
Yeah.
Twice on Sundays sometimes. And yes, do you know how to fall when you're working in WWE? Yes.
Oh, God, I hope so. If you don't, you can really hurt yourself.
But Donnie can attest to this. When I was working on the independent scene, how many times did I get popped in the nose? JJ tried to break my nose in a training session. Things happen in wrestling. They're not always planned to happen, but things happen. You do get hurt, and you do have to train, and you do have to have that conditioning. I would dare say, Conor McGregor has said that really Brock is the only one from WWE that could ever come over to UFC. CM Punk's doing it. I damn sure know that 10 years ago Taker could have done it if he wanted to.
Oh, Taker could have thrown some soup bones. He said that if cage fighting was as popular today as it was 20 years ago, he wouldn't have stepped in a WWE ring. He'd have made his money knocking people out with his bare hands.
And let's go back to the Attitude Era. When UFC was still in its birthing stage, two of their biggest original stars came to WWE.
Oh, and they kind of helped promote it.
Yeah.
They were wearing the belts. They were wearing the gear. And
Ken Shamrock and Dan the Beast Severn. Dan the Beast Severn stuck with pro wrestling. I don't know if you know this, but he actually he stuck with pro wrestling. The NWA was a small territorial thing after WCW took off and did its own thing. Dan Severn was like a multi-time NWA champion, and currently I have a friend who is actually training with Dan Severn up in Michigan Sports Camp. He still trains in pro wrestling. He still trains people for pro wrestling.
Oh, wow.
So
I did not know that. I know Ken Shamrock went back to the Octagon.
He did.
But even then, I remember I saw a fight thing about a year ago. He came out, and who would come to the ring but Road Warrior Animal?
Yeah.
A professional wrestler walked out, a professional cage fighter, to his match.
When UFC first got started, it did not have the pomp and circumstance that it does today. And where did they take that? They took that from WWE. So there's elements of WWE. The way they promote their fights, all of those fighters are taking elements from WWE promos. They have to add that in. Otherwise, there's no reason. Okay, we signed a contract to fight. What makes it personal? They make it personal. How do they do that? Because they watch how WWE has been doing it for 50, 60 years. And
it's just gotten more elaborate, more intense. Back in the day when it was Hulk Hogan, he would get all hot and sweaty, and he would let you know he was the best. And then maybe you'd get a Randy Savage thrown in there. Maybe get a cocky Roddy Piper thrown in there. Ric Flair with his sunglasses, poofed hair, and a suit and tie. But now, everyone cuts a promo. Everyone has their own character. They make everyone know who they are by the way they talk, by the way they move. McGregor is just showing he's an asshole.
And that's why I'm thinking McGregor's comments, a lot of them are just him trying to promote himself and promote a fight. And honestly, the last time he stepped in the octagon with Nate Diaz, he lost. So that's who he's stepping up with. So why would he taunt Nate Diaz? He wouldn't. Because he knows Nate Diaz is going to whoop his ass again. So what's he going to do? He's going to taunt somebody who he knows isn't going to fight back. It's WWE. Because he's not going to step over, if that's the case. But I think the real case is that he's actually trying to set up a fight for WrestleMania with Brock Lesnar.
And as I said it before, I wouldn't mind. With the brand split, we're getting new pay-per-views. We're getting a Raw pay-per-view, and we're getting a SmackDown pay-per-view. And I can only assume that leading up to WrestleMania, we would have two pay-per-views. I would not be opposed to a UFC versus WWE pay-per-view. Guys like Brock Lesnar, representing UFC even, or against McGregor would be great. CM Punk coming over for one more match against a guy like Samoa Joe or an AJ Styles.
Guys he's worked with on the independents, but never on that big stage of WWE.
Austin Aries, he's at NXT, but who knows where he's going to be in the next 6 months. And then Ronda Rousey, definitely would love to see Ronda Rousey go at it. Slightly off topic, Nia Jax, showing how dominant she is on Raw the past few weeks. Going against local jobbers, but
Cody Rhodes hates you.
Cody Rhodes hates me. And that's okay, baby. But I could see, Nia Jax being dominant between now and then to face a Ronda Rousey. Just for like a network exclusive pay-per-view. And then that would bring not only WWE fans, but also UFC fans as well. So is McGregor's comments, the words he's saying, the way he's acting about professional wrestling, is it a plug to cross over? Bring someone over to him? Jobber lives matter. They do matter. But Nia Jax didn't give a shit. So, no. So, I would like to see it. But, like everything in entertainment, professional wrestling, and UFC, you just got to kind of wait it out.
Braun Strowman don't care either. And I want to get
Braun Strowman don't care.
Donnie's question here is, what are our opinions and thoughts on Damian Sandow now on the indie scene and in TNA under the new name Aaron Rex? I like the promo. My problem is, and this is going back to me talking about TNA, I don't think that TNA is a viable competition for WWE, and I don't think it will be. And here's the thing. Everybody keeps talking. Every time something big happens, I do. I like his character. I just don't think it's going to matter much because every time something big happens in TNA, right now, they have a new president in Billy Corgan, the front man from Smashing Pumpkins. Every time something big happens, the internet fans, they start rumbling. And they start rumbling saying, TNA is going to come back. TNA is going to make a bigger impact. But they don't. And here's the problem, because they don't have a sense of direction on what they're doing. They don't have storylines. Okay, I don't really know the last impactful storyline they've had in the last 10 years. I think he is a joke. I don't think. The only reason he's involved is because he helped build them out so they could run Slammiversary. Sorry. That's the only reason he's involved in TNA.
You've heard stories for years now of people who've still with the company or left the company, and their paychecks would just be less than $1. TNA had a hard time paying their... If they got paid at all. It's sad that ECW, when it was so minor and it was so run down, and they were working in bingo halls and just renting out buildings just to fill it up, they were getting paid. All this money from the fans going. But the wrestlers weren't getting paid because the finances for the ring, for the hall, the TV time, the pay-per-views, the cameras, that had to get paid for first. The wrestlers were working for free. And it's sad to think that TNA, a big televised company...
That's owned by a publicly traded company, a Panda Energy.
But it's got, I would like to think, hundreds of thousands of dollars getting brought in merchandise and TV time, and they're not getting paid.
Yeah.
Right. And they'd rather I'm going to work here than work for Vince McMahon because I don't like that company. I like to get paid for my services. And things like, ladder matches and cages and, Abyss, and he must be at least the only one getting paid because he gets put through so much stuff. The thumbtacks, the fires, the barbed wires. He must be getting paid, but a lot of other guys aren't. I just don't see how that makes any sense. Why would you want to stay there if you're not going to get paid?
But from what I understand, James Storms just quit again.
Oh, that's twice in 1 year.
And
fantastic.
He made a comment when he left, and Russell just brought it up here in the comment section, that when he left, he made a comment that says, maybe I'll go down the road and see some of my buddies. Obviously, he was talking about NXT and his former Beer Money tag team partner.
Mm-hmm. Bobby Roode.
Bobby Roode.
Which wouldn't be... And with Bobby Roode being on NXT now, a weekly character, he's not just sitting around in the audience now, he's actually in the ring. And James Storm has already been in NXT for a little bit. Could we see Beer Money become a tag team again, but this time in NXT? And if that's the case, could they branch out to the main roster?
I think eventually. I think we wouldn't obviously call it Beer Money. I mean, we could call it the Glorious Rednecks or something like that. Glorious. That one's for you, Russell. But I just don't see how TNA will ever. I mean, really, their best time frame was like 2002 to 2007.
When Kurt Angle jumped
in 2006, that was huge.
In 2006, and then Sting got brought in. Nash. I wasn't a big fan of Nash and TNA. I wasn't either, like he was one of those guys. They were like, he shouldn't have won the belt. There were a lot more deserving people that could win belts, but not like Nash, not Scott Hall. But it's like with the main event Mafia, with Kurt Angle, Nash, Sting, Scott Steiner, and Booker T, and then eventually Samoa Joe, and then Taz also got brought in. It was building up to being main event, 10+ year veteran guys going up against guys like Samoa Joe and AJ Styles, Beer Money. It was a good idea, but it almost kind of seemed like a NWO versus WCW kind of thing. Like the more numbers, you think it's a better thing.
And honestly,
and
that's the problem.
Imploded.
That was the problem with 90% of their storylines. It was all, a lot of it, WCW rehashes. The band, when they had Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and Eric Young, I
remember Pac was in there for a little bit.
And they were calling it the band. I mean, they had that. You had Fortune, the Four Horsemen.
Yeah, there's a big difference between this and this. It's just. And Ric Flair managed Fortune. They came out in suits and they had money and they came in limos. Like it was a modern day Four Horsemen. Didn't mind it, but they didn't. How they make it work for very long? It wasn't good enough.
For me, I like the athleticism of Donnie was talking in the comment section about Lucha Underground. I like the athleticism of Lucha Underground. I do. I like the matches. I like the way they work. I don't like the way I don't like the way the cameras are set. I don't like the way where it's presented. I just don't like the way the storylines are presented.
They say that wrestling is like
soap opera.
Like a soap opera. Lucha Underground seemed like a soap opera.
Yeah, with
a little bit of wrestling thrown in.
I tried to watch it. I couldn't get into it. I mean, they have some phenomenal talent. I mean, obviously they've got Johnny Mundo, a.k.a. John Morrison, a.k.a. Johnny Nitro. They've got him. They've got Rey Mysterio there. They've got...
seen Chavo Guerrero there a couple of times.
Chavo. So, I mean, they've got some great talent, but I cannot get into the soap opera style story that they tell. Pentagon, yes. Pentagon, that was the other one I was thinking of, but I couldn't think of his name. They've got some amazing talent there, but the way the storylines are presented for me personally, I can't watch it. I cannot sit down and watch a whole episode of it. I tried.
I thought about it. I saw a commercial, and I was like, it's different.
It is.
With you have WB and their 4-sided ring, and it was a big arena and a lot of lights and a lot of things going on. You watched Impact in like I said, between 2002 and like about 2008, when they had a 6-sided ring and they had 2 entrance gates. That was a huge difference with some old guys that you recognize. And then you got Lucha Underground, which it has a big feel, but also it has like the veteran ECW kind of feel. Like it's in a warehouse. They don't have an entrance half the time. They just kind of come out through the crowd. You get the big names to give it more publicity, but then you also got newer guys no one's ever heard of to hopefully maybe they'll get pushed up somewhere too, or make Lucha Underground even a bigger thing that it already is.
I like Ricochet. I would love to see him in WWE. But transitioning from Lucha Underground to the WWE Cruiserweight Classic, which has some phenomenal talent in there. Just amazing talent. A guy that I was watching the episode from Wednesday last night when I got home from work, and they had Jack Gallagher, who he's this British guy, just amazing, just mind-blowing stuff that some of these guys in this Cruiserweight Classic are doing, and I would like to see a lot of them come up to the main roster and work the Cruiserweight division and also into NXT. You've got some returning veterans. You've got Tajiri, who's still putting on, dude's like 50 years old, putting on some great matches.
He looks a little older, but he hasn't slowed down.
No.
He's still slapping the kicks and the tarantula. It looked good. Yeah. I watched only one episode of the Classic, and it was, fortunate enough, it was with Tajiri. And I believe the guy he fought, I can't remember what his first name was, his last name was Slater. Mm-hmm. And I think he was from Australia. And I was upset that Tajiri actually won. I was glad to see him, but seeing how Slater worked, it was really good. I would like to see him on Raw with the Cruiserweight division or NXT on there with a lot of newer guys, too.
I agree with Russell. I was also pulling for Tony Nese to beat Brian Kendrick. As much as I like Brian Kendrick, just like you were saying, it was nice to see Brian Kendrick. However, this is a time for the new guys to shine, and we know Brian Kendrick is going to get that contract. Tony Nese, loved Tony Nese. He was another guy I liked watching. And I found this in a lot of the matches that I watched from the Cruiserweight Classic, where I'm not so much mad at the outcome because I like every guy that I've seen so far. I'm mad because somebody that I liked lost. And it doesn't matter who would have lost. I would have liked either winner, but I still was mad about the other loser because I like everybody in the tournament. And everybody in that tournament that I have seen so far has just amazed me. Every match is awesome. The commentary from Mauro Ranallo and Daniel Bryan is awesome. I mean, everything about the Cruiserweight Classic, it feels different than WWE. I mean, you've got the logos on the mat, which is something WWE does not do. You've got the turnbuckles that are even different than what WWE is used to.
Oh, those wide ones
Yes, the wide ones for the Cruiserweight Classic.
Okay.
I mean, everything just feels different. The only thing that feels like a WWE thing is the fact that it's a WWE referee. It's the only thing.
WWE referee, Daniel Bryan is on commentary, and you can only watch it on the WWE Network.
And it's the NXT arena. But let's be honest, it's the NXT arena.
So it's a lot of different things. There's 32
Kota
different
Ibushi.
people.
Yeah, I think so. It was a 32
people, 16 different countries. Like, I wouldn't mind if all 32, because they had to pick 32 of the best in the world to be in this tournament. So I would want, split them up, divide it up between the Raw, need some Cruiserweight people for the Cruiserweight division, throw some over on SmackDown like Tajiri or Brian Kendrick, give them back their rise they used to have, about 2004 to 2006 time frame. And then obviously a lot of them need to go on NXT that need a little bit of work.
Well, Kendrick, I mean, think about this. Kendrick in 2008 was actually in contention for the WWE Championship.
The Brian Kendrick. I remember he was in a scramble match.
Yes, he was in the scramble match
for the WWE Championship, and
he actually held the belt during the scramble match for a little bit.
Oh, did he really?
Yes, he did.
Son of a bitch.
But I would definitely like to see most of those competitors filter into between NXT, Raw, and SmackDown, like you said. But guys like Alexander and Ibushi, Kota Ibushi, Ho Ho Loon was a really, really talented guy. There's just so many talented guys in this competition. It's hard to name them all. But there's T.J. Perkins is in there. And I love T.J. Perkins. I liked him in TNA when I did see him. He wrestled as Manic and Suicide. So definitely an exciting time to be a wrestling fan, I think. And
it's a great time right now. I think with the Cruiserweight Classic, it's almost adding like another brand, a new way to watch wrestling. You've got your Raws, your SmackDowns, your Impacts, you've got Ring of Honor, you got Lucha Underground, and now you have the Cruiserweight Classics, which just focuses on just cruiserweights from all over the world. Who is the best one? There's not storylines. There's really hardly any gimmicks. It's just straight. Who's the best? Who's the quickest? Who's the most technical? And then we get to see who the winners out of 32 people. So I think it's a great time to be a wrestling fan. It's a huge time. We're trying something new. So I'm ready to see what goes on this week with the Cruiserweight Classic. I'm not sure how many men do we have left. I think we're about halfway through it now.
Yeah,
we do about 2 or 3 matches a night.
The episode this week was going through the second round. So we still got some more second round matches, I think, that are going to finish up next week, and then it goes into the quarterfinals.
It's going quick. So when does this culminate then?
I'm not 100% sure.
I would like to think that this is going to culminate maybe by Backlash, which is September 11th, only on the WWE Network. Not trying to give them a plug, but
one more week of round 2, and then the Elite 8. So I would think, about Backlash. We're going to see. So what does this winner get? Do they get a championship? Do they get a contract? They get a medal.
They get a medal.
But the rumor is that the winner will also get the first Cruiserweight Championship under the new era.
Now, I'm not sure if this is the same belt I saw. I was playing W2K16 version this week, and I said, ooh, that's a good-looking custom Cruiserweight belt, and I downloaded it. And it's got the purple logo on it. It's got the side plates. It looks good, if that is the actual belt, or at least a near to me what the belt's going to look like, it looks good to me. So I'm excited to see where this goes. This belt, is it just a random belt to have? Is this going to be an NXT championship, or will this be the Raw championship for the Cruiserweight division? I'm excited. This is a great week already. It's coming to an end tomorrow night.
So we're transitioning to this weekend. So tonight we've got NXT Takeover Brooklyn 2.
We got Takeover, and it starts in 4 minutes.
It does start in 4 minutes. But we still have more to talk about, so we're gonna have to miss part of it. But that's okay. That's the benefit of the WWE Network. You can start from the beginning.
That is true.
So you've got.
So what the Takeover tonight?
Yeah, Takeover tonight. You've got the main event, which is Samoa Joe and Shinsuke Nakamura.
I haven't really seen Joe work since he's come back or come to WWE. I saw the match where he beat Finn Balor for the belt. I saw parts of that. That he looked pretty good. He hasn't changed in the past probably 15 years.
He could be another top heel once he moves to the main roster. Apparently, they're doing Shinsuke's entrance music live tonight.
Ooh.
Okay. It's a professional violinist is going to be there. But so you've got Shinsuke and Samoa going in for the NXT Championship. For the NXT Women's Championship, you've got Bayley and Asuka. That's going to be an awesome women's match.
I'm rooting for my girl Bayley.
You've got there's several other undercard matches. Austin Aries and No Way Jose are going to be in action against each other.
Jose wasn't too bad. I saw him a couple months ago. He's not too bad.
You've got Bobby Roode making his WWE NXT in-ring debut. Ciampa and Gargano going after the tag titles. And if you didn't see their match at the Cruiserweight Classic, you need to, because it was awesome. But Ciampa and Gargano are going after the tag team titles with the Revival, which is one of my favorite tag teams going right now.
Oh, the Revival, yes.
Because I'm such a big fan of the throwback tag teams like Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, the Brainbusters. I got W2K16 in my head.
My bad. You said Anderson, so...
Yeah. So there's such a throwback to Anderson and Tully that I love them, and I love the way they cut off the ring. They're a great heel tag team, but Ciampa and Gargano are an amazing talent, and I think that's going to be an awesome tag team match. So you're going to have that going on. So you've got a huge card. I'm excited to see Bobby Roode. I'm excited to see Austin Aries. I'm excited to see the main event. I'm excited for the women's tag match. I'm excited. Ember Moon debuts tonight.
Ember Moon debuts. I don't really know who that is, but I just found out I was following her on Snapchat and watching her train and stuff. She looks ready. I'm ready to see that. I'm ready to see her get out there.
We're definitely excited about NXT Takeover Brooklyn 2 tonight. I definitely think we see some surprises. I'm not quite sure what.
The last NXT show I watched, we saw Paul Ellering.
Yes.
Paul Ellering. So that was a huge throwback. So I would love to see. It's SummerSlam weekend. This is damn near WrestleMania season in the summertime.
Yes.
Anything could happen. So
segue, if you will, into SummerSlam tomorrow night. I think it's going to be huge. I think there's going to be a couple of returns that I'm predicting for tomorrow night, and I think it's going to be awesome.
Awesome?
Awesome.
Awesome.
Not that kind of awesome.
Not that awesome.
Not like Miz
However,
awesome.
What is awesome is Miz defending the Intercontinental Championship against Apollo Crews. And Apollo Crews...
Not to be confused with Apollo Creed.
That is true. Or Cherry Crews. I think Apollo Crews, he's one of the fastest rising NXT superstars to hit the main roster. He was in contention for the number one contenders match against Dean Ambrose for SummerSlam. He was part of the six-pack challenge. So I think that Apollo Crews has a great chance at taking that belt off the Miz. Miz has been cocky lately. He's come out how he's been the champion for so many days. I think Apollo Crews has got it in the bag tonight, and that's going to be awesome in my opinion.
I see. I do think Apollo got called up too